You are watching Psychic Witch Talk, hosted by Christine Rossi and Diana Rachel. Christine Rossi reads at the Mystic Dream in Walnut Creek, California, and Diana Rachel runs Tarot Real Psychic Life Coaching in San Francisco, California. Hi everyone, my name is Diana Rachel. Some of you know me because you've known me for years. For those of you that aren't familiar with me in this context, I've been a practitioner of witchcraft as a sort of performance art form and as a lifestyle since about 1996. I've written 3 books on witchcraft so far. I'm in the process of writing a book on urban witchcraft right now. And over the years, I've developed a sort of set of best practices when it comes to spell work, especially something that would be considered to some degree kind of combative spell work like binding. The reason I'm talking to you today is because several people have sent me the articles and the Facebook links to the Bind Trump and Magic Resistance. Now, my first reaction, and I'll warn you, I swear like a sailor on a good day, is where were you motherfuckers during the primaries? But my second reaction is, okay, you want to do this. I'm always happy to see people do something, even if I don't necessarily agree with it. And if you're going to do this, then my response is to, one, look over everything that was printed and bring out my tarot cards and my Lenormand cards and my divination systems and go, okay, let's ask some important questions and see what's likely to happen. Especially since, in this case, it's actually pretty nuanced. So this is big political stuff. This isn't just one-on-one stuff, which is what most witches end up dealing with. And there is historical foundation for this. There really was a coven in the UK that was covered in Life magazine that did a spell to prevent Hitler. Now, there's 2 major differences between that and now. The first is that most of the UK was pretty much opposed to Hitler. The US definitely has a more divided problem because I don't think people fully understand what the entire executive branch is about right now. And if they did, I'm not sure they'd care because a lot of them are trying to make us not so much lose our rights in their minds, but go back to a better time. And that better time was pretty much oppressive for anyone except white men. But that was what was considered normal in America right up until the 1960s. And, you know, the women in the 50s on Valium be damned, you know? So the other thing is that that particular spell that was being done in the UK was to protect an island. An island is one hell of a lot smaller than a continent. And North America, one of the many reasons that we have both the diversity and ideological problems we have is because the literal geographic expanse makes it almost impossible for true heterogeneous values to take place, which is one of the better things about living here, but especially when it comes to things like federal elections is one of the biggest problems. So, looking this over, and I am going off of notes because I just sat down and planned this today, is the first question I would want to look at, and so I'm shuffling my tarot cards, is, all right, overall, what would be the outcome of people doing this spell? And, you know, my speaking up may actually change the outcome a little bit. You never know. You know, there's going to be, you know, a few people that are brick walls and a few people that really want to hear what I have to say. It depends on the day. So the first thing I'm looking at is the potential outcome of doing a binding on Trump. And looking at that one, the first card I've pulled is the Wheel of Fortune inverted. That's not a good sign, my friends. That does mean that this would possibly work against the practitioners that are doing this, or against everybody. There's going to be a huge kickback on this one. But the next sign is Glory. So let me see what the next one is, because it's soon enough that I don't really need more than 3 cards, is Resurrection. So, okay, ultimately this may actually do a good thing. I still want to ask more questions and drill down, because I'm of the opinion that, one, I believe Trump may actually be protected in certain ways, but I also think he's the face of the problem instead of the real problem. And in some ways, he may not actually be a problem. We just don't know yet. So my next question is this: for people that do this binding, what will a karmic kickback be? So let me go ahead, and I'm pulling that. And so the first one is Birth of Light inverted. So the next one, and this would be the kickback that happens as a result of doing the spell. Even if you get a good result, there's always some kind of secondary result that can be good or bad, depending on how you do it. The next is the High Priestess. And the next is Dawn. Now, the intuitive thing that came to me when I was pulling these cards, especially when I saw the High Priestess, is that there probably would be a period of depression or signs of things getting much worse. But then what would happen is sort of a universal intuition or a sudden understanding of what the place in all of this is. So that's one thing. So it looks like there would be a kickback if you do it. There are ways to soften the kickback, and I am going to talk about that. But right now I want to go through all the questions you need to be asking if you decide you want to do this. So the next part that I would want to ask is, what's protecting the person that you want to bind? And that's actually a pretty important question, because a lot of people assume that just because someone doesn't practice your tradition or your religion or doesn't even practice magic, that they don't have some juice themselves. Most people have at least a little bit of juice. So I'm looking at what would be protecting the target of this popular spell. I'm seeing Mother Wind inverted, Brother Wind inverted. So these are people that may actually be working magic for him, or may just be putting things on his side. Sister Water, right side up, I'm assuming that's his daughter. The other two, who the hell knows? But there are people working for him. And then Sacred Cord inverted, which means that there is something at work to shelter him from the consequences of his actions and choices. So there are forces around him that are working for him or against him. Now, strategically, if I had more time, I would probably want to be doing more of a reading on who these specific characters are, because it might be better strategically to bind them instead of him. So, if you've got a giant talking Cheeto, how much can you really do with it? But if there's things surrounding the giant talking Cheeto, that's a different story. So my next question would be, out of that, is what is the source of that energy? And so a card just popped out on me. The source of the energy is Sister Water inverted. Now, this could be a spiritual force. This could be, I don't know, I almost want to read it as kind of a youthful misogyny thing, especially with Mother Water inverted coming up right after that. And then I'm also pulling the Emperor. So it seems like whatever this force is, and the primary emotional pull behind it is rooted in just really having some kind of problem with women having the experiences they have, or seeing them as real or something. But in this case, it's almost like a deep-seated emotional misogyny. Now, I don't know about anybody's mother or what their relationship with their mothers were like, but apparently it's informing the actions of the executive branch right now. So the next question that you need to ask for yourself is, what will contact with that energy do to you? So taking a look at that, and since I do think that we have emotional exchanges that are borderline hormonal, we really do breathe in each other's experiences sometimes, this is something that you should kind of take pretty seriously. So looking at this one, and I'm just looking overall as like what the general effect will be on the people that are doing this is, let me take a look here. So struggle. So it seems like this probably will take a lot more energy than a lot of people are expecting. Screen inverted, this might actually expose things that you'd rather keep secret or keep private or protected or safe. But High Priestess is that it will end up being a fairly powerful spiritual lesson for most of the people that participate. So the next question I ask, and some of this has been kind of coming up as I do the reading, and yeah, this is my typical reading style as I read crazy fast. So what are the forces and influences that surround this person? So I'm pulling this one. So the card I pulled for Trump is the Emperor, because that makes sense. And now if I do something that's kind of like a 4 points around him, so I pull Clarity Inverted. So I'm using the Tarot of Spirit because that one is pretty much the one that speaks to me the most easily. So in this case, he really doesn't know what he's doing. He really isn't aware of the consequences of his actions. Struggle Inverted, which means someone's trying to make this as easy for him as possible. Cause and Effect Inverted, so again, really not aware of his actions, not aware of the effect, the impact, no idea of the depth and breadth. And then the Hierophant, which in this case is a person who is guarding a tradition, and given the negative connotation of these cards, it's a person who's guarding a tradition that's probably better off dead. So going from there, with that in mind, you decide for yourself if that's something you really want to do, if you want to bind or not bind. And from there, I want to talk a little bit more about what binding is. And I did look at the documents and the written out spell work, and if it was me practicing even 3 years ago, I probably would go, oh my gosh, that's totally fine. It's actually fairly solid and well written right. Now, from my understanding of binding is it can be fairly nuanced. You can actually do it as a punishment, you can do it as a tripwire, or you can do it as simply, you be you, you do you, just stop doing it to me. Now, trying to let Trump do him while getting him to stop doing it to you might be a little more difficult because it's not necessarily him that's doing it. So when you're doing these bindings, think very carefully about what it is you want to bind out. Also, you might be doing something where you're tying his hands from moving forward further, but there's other people around him that still have a lot of power to act. So in some cases, you might do better instead of binding someone to bless them with clarity, to let them see what they're really doing, just let them see who they're really affecting. The other thing is that binding can sometimes have worse consequences. Let's say you end up binding Trump, something causes him to leave office. Well, the next most immediate result is that we get Mike Pence as our president, and this is the guy that sends women to prison for having miscarriages. I don't know about you, but I really don't want that. So the other part that I really want all of you to think about is that the forces at work that got Trump in office and that are happening now are ostensibly Republican, but this Republican Party is not what the Republican Party was ever meant to be. And the stuff that's worked its way in there is, I would break it down to three psychological or tactical or philosophical parts. The first one, and the one I find the most frightening, is dominionism. Now, the way I've broken down dominionism is a whole bunch of people that consider themselves Paulist Christians that want to trash the earth so Jesus will get here sooner. Now, I don't know about you, for those of you that subscribe to Christian philosophy, a lot of Christians tend to have the steward the earth. God gave us this great gift. We should take care of it. That's not these people. These people are pretty much doing everything that a lot of Christians like to blame Satanists for. So that's what dominionism is. And combined with the capitalism, the way Trump and Bannon and Pence practice capitalism, that basically means they're going, what the hell, whoever dies with the most toys wins. That's really what's happening. And there's also just a little bit of evil chimp syndrome where people just like to see other people suffer. I don't know what triggers that part of the reptile brain, but some people just suck. So if you decide that you want to go for Trump instead of looking for a different angle, and my personal recommendation would be, this might have some effect, but a different angle might be better. If you're going to do it, the first thing I want to tell you to do is I would remove the writer and the spell about all those that support him and just focus on him. Magic does not multitask. the more you add to it, the more you spread it among different people, the more you try to take on a whole bunch of purposes at once, the less effective you're going to be. Now, the other part that I really want people to consider is that just because someone isn't magical doesn't mean they don't have magic they can work right back on you. Something that a lot of us are kicking ourselves for is the spiritual warfare movement started evolving around 1998, and a lot of us that were pagan or magical or just a little bit on the weird side just kind of dismissed it with, oh, these people don't have any power. They have the power of belief, they have the power of faith, they have that thing in their brain that makes them never even consider they might be the ones that are wrong. That's power, and that's some scary, scary stuff. So keep in mind that there's going to be some kind of spiritual kickback to this, because there are people that are praying for all of these horrible things to succeed too. And they really genuinely think it's a good thing, because to them, trash the earth and Jesus will come sooner. So looking at this one, I'm just going to do a quick go over on best practices in bindings if you choose to bind someone. And the first thing I would say is, before you do the spell, if you're going to do it, cleanse and ward your home. Put up any protections you can possibly think of. The next one is set up some protections to activate for yourself the minute you're finished. Have a bath ready, have a candle to light, have a series of prayers. I am very fond of hoodoo and conjure traditions. I really like Psalm 37. It's one of those ones that takes a really long time to pray, and it's better if you pray it more than once. Now, the other thing is that I would strongly suggest, especially given the paranoia of this particular office, is try to keep your own energy signature out of it. Wear gloves when you're doing the work. If you know about invisibility work and how that genuinely works, use it first, and use masking techniques even if you're picturing yourself being somebody else when you do the work. And before you do any of this, any of it, and I'm saying this because I really believe that it was our collective fear and the collective liberal fear that got this situation in place in the first place, is if you're working from a place of fear, all you're going to get back is what you fear, and more power to what you fear. If you're coming at this because you're afraid, don't do it. But if you can conjure in yourself a feeling of glee, a feeling of hope, an idea that this is simply carving the tunnel in the roadrunner wall of life, then you're fine. Now, the other thing you need to do is, when you're doing this work, is imagine and create and project how you want to feel when you're finished. So that is the feeling you need to have from beginning to end. Is if you want to feel hopeful, or if you want to feel free, or if you want to feel gleeful in a mischievous way. Those are good feelings to have. Put that out. But then the minute you're done, you need to bury that poppet outside your house and get it out of your house, so you don't have that energy rebounding on you. And usually, if you can bury it someplace, bury it. Otherwise, put it in a stream. I'm assuming you're going to make it out of something that won't kill the fish. And just get it gone and move on with your life, or move on to the next thing. And focus on bringing what you want into the world instead of getting rid of what you don't want. So that's what I've got to say about this binding. I wouldn't stop anyone from doing it, and I personally hate it when you get a lot of people going, no, no, don't do that, blah, 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 because the sit there and be hopeless thing is bullshit. At the same time, I believe that this may not be the best place to aim that energy. There may be better places to aim that energy, although the reading suggests that things will be spread out and enough people are doing it that the consequences won't be terrible, but they may be pretty damned uncomfortable for a lot of you. So that's what I've got to say about that. I'm Diana Rachel. I have a public Facebook page. I don't friend strangers, but people I know, and you can always follow me. I am on Twitter and YouTube under Psychic Witch Talk and a bunch of other things. So if you'd like to take a minute and have questions you'd like to post here, go right ahead. So, and yes, John Hijet or Hijet, I apologize if I'm totally mispronouncing your name and not using the Y for the J. Running water is actually a classic thing. I've heard it said that you should not put it in the ocean, which is tough for me because I live 6 blocks from Ocean Beach in San Francisco. But yeah, running water that moves away from you. If you're feeling particularly vicious, I don't know what the consequences would be if you're making the poppet out of something that goes down a garbage disposal and putting it down running water, but that seems a little vicious even for me when I'm feeling gleefully sadistic. So that's what I've got there. Feel free to post comments and questions on the discussion thread, and I'm going to see if I can post this thing to YouTube somehow. Book Diana at Diana Rachel Psychic Life Coaching by going to dianarachel.com. Don't forget the J between the A and the C, or by texting 415-508-3202. All appointments must be made a minimum of 24 hours in advance. Appointments are available by Skype, phone, and in person for those in the San Francisco Bay Area.